Well, Rudy Giuliani is just getting his feet wet in a new business venture, but he, of course, isn't the first politician to make the leap from government to business. Bruce Weindruch is CEO of the History Factory. He joins me once again from Washington with a look at how some other political retirees got into business. Bruce, good to see you again.
Good evening, Allie.
This goes back a long way. What's the earliest reference we've got in America to a politician going into business?
Well, you know, we've got them leaving office and going into agrarian pursuits, whether it be George Washington, who went back to run what was a quite large business, would have been his estate in Mount Vernon. But I like to look more forward to the more modern era, and probably in the more modern era, the one we'd probably look at would be Ulysses S. Grant, President Grant. I was listening to Mayor Giuliani, and I would think, here would be Grant saying, you know, I ran a big army, I won the Civil War, I had all these men working for me, I know a lot about how to run a business. Well, he went up to New York in 1881, he got involved in an investment bank, one of his junior partners committed a fraud, and the man lost, Ulysses S. Grant lost all his money. Had to pawn all the gifts he had been given as president. He had to pawn all of his swords and such, and literally died a bankrupt man on a pension from the United States. So just because you ran a big enterprise doesn't mean you can necessarily run a business.
And it's what you do in that enterprise too. Herbert Hoover, calling upon his experiences, tried to go into business as well. How did that work out?
Well, you know, that's a really interesting point. Hoover knew enough to how to gauge. He was a tremendous engineer, a great organizer, well before he had been a president. And afterwards, he used that skill to, first of all, help all the family relief after the Second World War, and then, more importantly, he turned that skill first under the Truman administration and then under the Eisenhower administration to help streamline the business of government. So there's a guy who used his business acumen and his great skills, but he focused it a little bit more on not too far afield from what he knew.
You know, in terms of post-presidential prominence, it's not business, but President Carter has probably been one of the most public of presidents out of office.
Absolutely. There's a case where, you know, you got the two cases. Would you rather be a businessman first and then be in office and then do your good works afterwards? That was President Carter, who was a very, very accomplished business person as a peanut farmer in Plains, Georgia. Made a fortune. In fact, that's normally how the political ways go. But he's turned his efforts to not-for-profit afterwards.
George Bush Sr.
George Bush Sr. is amazing because he's been smart enough, first of all, great businessman, but he's hooked himself up with the Carlyle Group, an organization which I think is amazing. Carlyle Group has people like Frank Carlucci, John Major, Baker, his Secretary of State. These individuals have worked together to form quite a powerful buyout firm here in Washington, D.C.
Now let's move it down from presidents to governors. Bill Weld of Massachusetts.
Yeah, well, Weld had it in his blood. His grandfather and great-grandfather founded White Weld. Later, the investment firm which later merged with Merrill Lynch. He's gotten very involved in Leeds Equity Partners, probably the largest private equity venture in investing in educational efforts, and he's done a real good job. And as I said, I think it's in his blood as an investment banker.
How about former Michigan Governor George Romney? What's his story?
Romney, not unlike Carter, he had made his name in saving American Motors. Had they followed his lead, they would have continued to survive. What happened was, after his governorship, he got involved in the not-for-profit area, and the organization he founded, the volunteer organization, became really part of the points of light that we knew under the George Bush era.
And when you get down to municipal level, city level, one of the most successful post-political careers, because a lot of people forget that he was the mayor of Cincinnati, Jerry Springer.
Yeah, well, that's probably the smartest idea. Go into media. Jerry Springer took, of course, parlayed his popularity, really was out of office, went into the broadcast media, and look, he turned it into quite a business.
Let's talk about Andrew Young.
Andrew Young, very similar. There's a fellow who had obviously a very accomplished from the civil rights movement through his public service, but more importantly, he linked that kind of knowledge and fair play and formed a business called Good Works International, in which he works with Nike to help them in terms of dealing with issues like their sweatshop issues and such.
That's a closer link, Bruce, to what we might think happens, and I guess that's what Willow Bay was trying to discuss with Giuliani. How do you take the specific, though huge, accomplishments you have in office and make that transition and translate that into success in the business world? And what's your view on that?
Well, the ones that we've seen are those who have stayed closest to what their God-given skills are, as well as staying close to either a cause or to politics. Giuliani's predecessor, John Lindsay, this poor fella, he got involved in something called NetAir, which was a visionary idea. It was not unlike fractional shares in airplanes, but the thing went broke. Well, I mean, he ran a couple of airports, right? He had LaGuardia and Kennedy, but it didn't prepare him for something that if he had stayed closer to what he knew, he probably would have been better suited for.
Bruce Weindruch, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Alex.